Magic is found in every room, where people connect over a shared purpose. In this weekly podcast, Luke, Hannah and Chris explore the role of purpose, courage, mindset and culture in every leader's quest for transformational performance.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Magic in the Room. I'm Luke Freeman.
And I'm Hannah Broderud. And today I'm excited to have a guest who is a community leader, serial entrepreneur, business, well-known public figure in my hometown of Big Sky, Montana, Eric Ladd. Welcome, Eric.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. So, Eric, you are the founder and chairman of Outlaw Partners, which is an umbrella of multiple companies and ventures. Can you tell us a little bit about Outlaw and your role, and then we'll get into a little bit of background?
You bet. Well, so Outlaw was founded 13 years ago in Big Sky, and I was proud to say up until recently I'd lived in a town without a stoplight, I think, for 25 years. And Big Sky now has stoplights, but I love the culture of small towns and being in the ski industry in Colorado and then in Yellowstone, or in Big Sky. I love just being around the mountains and that energy. And so my businesses have always kind of centered in those areas. And so Outlaw was founded in Big Sky and has now taken on some really exciting different, channels and different entities, but we primarily market ourselves as a marketing, media, events, and real estate company. And so those platforms keep us plenty busy on any given day.
Yeah, I bet. So that's a mouthful right there: marketing, media, events, and real estate.
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about maybe some of the different projects, events, things that you have going on?
You bet. So the company was primarily founded, originally it was started as a consulting company. My background was in real estate and marketing. And what we found is that a lot of companies that would hire us to consult on real estate and marketing, what we realized is that they were lacking an identity or a clear brand or a clear message. And so we started a marketing company originally to help with the businesses that we were consulting. Yeah. And then what we quickly realized is that something that needed help was the town that we were living in. And so Big Sky is this beautiful place in the shadow of Yellowstone Park, but it lacked that identity and message and voice. And so we started a media company to help. Originally was to give our community a voice. And that was our way of giving back to a community that had been really good to us. Mm-hmm. And so when we started Outlaw Media, it was centered around that. And then what we quickly realized beyond that was that events were this phenomenal way to get people to gather. And people love being at events, the body heat, the fun, the energy, the music. Mm-hmm. And so events became a really big part of that. And then when you put a bow on all these things we're doing, as businesses come to Outlaw and ask for our help with marketing, we can create a brand and we can actually take it full cycle of not only creating the brand, but we can put it into our media and then we can put it into events and activate people's brands with consumers. And so it became this closed loop circle kind of by default. We didn't plan on it, but all of a sudden we realized that in-house we could take a brand and put it through a full circle and activate it right into consumers' hands. And from there, all sorts of things have grown. We're now, in our 12th year of producing a PBR rodeo in Big Sky. And we do these world-class rock and roll concerts and TEDx events and all sorts of fun stuff that really, it brings a lot of joy to our business, but it's also a big pillar of our company.
Yeah. I got to go to the PBR event for the first time this past summer. Yeah. And it was definitely a lot of fun. It was my first PBR event that I had ever been to. And I was reading, about the Big Sky PBR. It's been voted the best PBR event of the nation multiple years in a row. Yeah,
I think we're 7th year in a row. Very proud of that achievement. The riders, and just to clarify for all the listeners, PBR is not Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. It's actually professional bull riding.
Good clarification.
We often get asked why we're into light Midwestern beer. But the PBR rodeo, little known fact, is the second fastest growing spectator sport in the United States next to NASCAR.
Wow. No way.
Yeah, wow. Incredible. And it's now this sport that's going around the world. You've got riders from Brazil and Mexico and Canada. But about 18 years ago, I was in Vegas and got to go to the PBR World Finals. And it was just an off chance that was there. And when I bought my tickets from the scalper, he said, you have to buy the Golden Buckle tickets and go front row.
Okay.
And I'm like, I'd never bought a ticket that expensive in my life. He says, if you don't have the best time of your life, I'll refund your money. And I sat there at that event that night and felt the energy of the fireworks and the music and the bulls and the riders and Flint Rasmussen, the clown. And I'm like, we've got to bring this to Montana.
Yeah.
And so I didn't settle. I wanted to bring the best event. I wanted to bring the same event that I saw in Vegas to Big Sky.
Yeah.
And so my business partner, Andy Watson, and Jim Murphy, we all got together and said, let's carve out of a sagebrush field, literally build bleachers like Field of Dreams and bring the same event that we saw with 40,000 fans in Vegas to Big Sky. And sure enough, 12 years later, it's turned out to be kind of one of the quintessential events of the area, and we love it. It's a lot of fun.
Luke was in Big Sky for the first time a few weeks ago, and we drove by the sagebrush with the bleachers in the middle of the field outside of town center.
Yeah, it's wild to think that that's happened. And the first year, we didn't even have enough money to buy all the bleachers. So we had one deck of bleachers, and then we brought in flatbed trucks and put hay bales on it. And then Geyser Rafting brought their buses and put rafts on top, and the people sat on top of the buses. And it was standing room only that first year. And every year since then, we keep buying more aluminum and building out the stadium.
Wow.
It's fantastic.
So I know we have a lot of things to talk about, but I want to pull thread on this just a little bit more. So to have created something that is the best in the country in its class.
Maybe the best in the world, because it doesn't
Sure,
really exist anywhere else, maybe.
Right. What's the secret sauce? I mean, what if someone said, hey, I've got this thing that I'm doing and this idea, I want to make it amazing. I want to make it top notch. I want it to be head and shoulders above the peers that it's competing against. Like what's the story of PBR Big Sky and what's that differentiator?
Yeah, that differentiator for us, I'd say is a couple important things as I do a look back over 12 years. One is authentic to place. And so an event or a business needs to have some authenticity to place.
Yeah.
So it has to have a natural connection to the people in the area, the sponsors, the ticket holders, the setting. And so a rodeo in Montana, I mean, give me a break. Like that's as authentic to place as you can get.
Yeah.
The second one for us is we were willing to step out of our comfort zone of doing a small rodeo, and we grabbed it was like having the Patriots come play at a high school field. Like, we wanted to do something big, and that first step is very risky and it's a big gulp. But if you believe in enough, people will come and support you, is what I realized. And look back, there was never a doubt. But those first couple of years, we lost money. I think we lost money for the first 4 years or 5 years. But every year it got better and better. The sponsors got bigger. And then I think the last thing is the way you treat people. And so I mean that on all fronts. We treat the riders really well. This is the only rodeo in the country where we pay their entry fees. And we take care of them. They show up, they get an envelope full of cash to go enjoy Big Sky. And the local businesses help sponsor them and give them, take care of them and give them gift cards and things like that. And then also the way we support the community. And there's always a give back component. There's always charities. There's always support going back. We've done over $1.5 million in donations over the last 12 years back to local charities. All those things helped kind of build your army to make sure that was going to have success.
Yeah.
So I think those are the threads for us.
How much ownership do you feel like just Joe Big Sky feels? If I'm a local, maybe I've been around 20, 30 years, or I own a small business in Big Sky. Like, what does that event mean for me? Do I feel like it's my event on some level? Yep. Like, what's your take on that?
I saw a local company the other day that rents houses, a property management company, and they send out a blog about the Big Sky PBR yesterday. And it was this 2-page blog, and I went and read through it, and there was 2 things that came to mind. One is that our company was never mentioned in it. And at first I was kind of like, wow, we've put so much into this. But then I realized that it's grown beyond us. It's now the communities. We are simply a facilitator now of that event. It is Big Sky's event. And it is not ours. We helped start it. We were the founding company. We make it happen every year. But I hope that 20, 30, 40 years from now, that event is still going, and it is the communities. And so that was a tough transition to watch. But I think that once again proved a good idea is when it grows beyond you and it can become part of a community to support and make succeed. And so as it goes through ups and downs over the years and it has its growing pains, like we're trying to build a permanent arena, that's going to take the community to do that, not Outlaw.
Yeah.
And so I think now that the community does that, it's kind of gone on to its next. It's not no longer a teenager. Now it's an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. What is it about the event itself that makes it the best?
Outdoor.
Yeah.
It's one of the few PBRs in the country that's outdoor. Most of them are now in big arenas.
Right.
And so that's a huge thing that the Cowboys say.
Yeah.
It goes back to that thread. The Cowboys say, obviously, how we treat them.
Yep.
And then the last is it's called the Big Sky Prom. So people get dressed up.
Yep.
And people go out and they buy the boots and the hats and they get all dressed up. And it's the loudest crowd on tour. I went to Madison Square Gardens and our crowd beat that. I went to the World Finals in Vegas. Our crowd put that to shame.
Wow.
Our crowd doesn't sit down. They're like standing up, cheering and partying like this is like the World Finals.
Wow.
And the Cowboys just sit there in awe and they're looking up at the stands being like, these people are crazy. And it's just so unique to that audience of Big Sky to have this, that they pump that energy into that arena and magical stuff happens.
Yeah.
Our first year we did this, we got down to the last ride in Bow Hill. A cowboy from Montana was in second place and he rode and his points put him in second place, but the bull fouled and he had a chance to do a re-ride.
Wow.
Well, you think about doing a re-ride in bull riding, like you get to roll the dice again in like your life. And I mean, the chance of riding a bull is very low. And Bo took the re-ride and won. And so we had a Montana cowboy take a re-ride on the last ride of the last night of the first PBR and win. It was like storybook ending. And from there, it's just all sorts of magical things have happened over the years.
Yeah. Man,
amazing.
awesome. I mean, if I'm a listener, like what I hear in that is, as you said, authenticity. Is it authentic to the place? Is it an authentic event? You know, you can't fake caring for the riders, right? That takes work, that takes investment. Yeah. And shared ownership.
Yeah.
Like how do you make other people buy in as much as you with your idea are bought in, right? There's a lot of people out there who have great ideas. I'm sure every listener has this one thing they're like, man, I've been thinking about doing this. But if you want it to succeed, like who else needs to buy in? How do you start telling that story? How do you start inviting people into that? So very, very cool.
Yeah, it's passion. And so, I mean, I remember the feeling when I sat in Vegas, I could feel it in the center of my chest of not only the music and the energy, but it was so, you know, it was so authentic to that moment. And if you can take that and then make that curate whatever idea it is to your community, to your place, to your business. That first PBR I went to, I had 2 empty seats that my friends no-showed on. And I was too anxious to get in there. I didn't want to scalp the tickets. So I walked in to the arena, went to the very top, got the people that were sitting in the worst seats in the house, and I gave them 2 tickets to come front row. And this couple from Oklahoma comes down and he had tears in his eyes because they follow PBR all year. And he sat there and he was like, couldn't imagine being front row at the World Finals. And he sat there for the next 2 hours and taught me everything about the sport. And he paid to have the beer guy keep coming down and putting beers in my hand. But it was, it just helped seeing the passion of that couple. I wish I could find them. And see where what they did that night helped push me over the edge to do what we're doing now. But they were very passionate about it.
What a great story.
Yeah.
I love that. And of course, we have Oklahoma connections. Luke is based in Oklahoma and our company main office is in Oklahoma. So,
well, all of our bulls that we now own are in Oklahoma with our partner, Cord McCoy, who's a famous rodeo a famous cowboy in his own right. He was on The Amazing Race twice. We got so passionate about this, we now own bulls with him. So we have 30 bulls around the country at Cliffhanger and Midnight Rock and Viper and Outlaw and all these bulls that are on the tour now. So
that's awesome.
Phenomenal.
Well, I want to rewind. I mean, we could talk about so many of your projects and really dig in a few layers deep like we just did with this event. But I want to rewind. And as we were talking before we started recording, one of the things you said was that you lead with passion, that's a hallmark for you. that you think other people would say, right? The folks on your team, people who've worked with you before. And I'm just curious, like, give us a little bit of the origin story. Like, where did that passion come from? Have you always had it? Did you have a point or some touchstone points in your career that helped you get to this point of like, man, every day when I get up and put my feet on the floor, like, passion is what is leading my steps?
You bet. Sales that's, if I were to, someone were to say like, Eric, pick one word to describe what you do, I'm a salesman. I mean, I love the art of sales, but sales is done through authenticity and passion. If you're passionate and authentic about what you do, you can sell anything.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't believe it, you're not going to sell it.
And we all do that. Like, every human being is a natural salesperson when they tap into that. Right? Absolutely.
Everyone's a salesperson, and you're just not aware of, like, you got to be aware of what makes your heart beat and have that flutter. And so as a kid, I used to pick apricots in our tree and pull my wagon down to the corner and sell apricots. And I believe they were the best apricots. And I would be down there. My parents would have to come pick me up and peel me off the street corner and like take me home, because I love the art of like turning fruit into money. Yeah. So it was like, it was pretty amazing.
It's a good skill to have.
So I remember my first buyout was our neighbor, Arnold, was an older gentleman, and his business was you had to pull up to his place, pick your own apricots and pay him. Well, I took my wagon out to the front of his driveway and cut off his traffic. And I was selling people the apricots, so he started to lose business. So I came home one day and he came up and stuffed $100 in my pocket and took my wagon away and said, "This was your first buyout." And so I was done. I was done selling apricots. But back to your question of where it came from, I think if I had to point at two people, my grandfather, when I was selling real estate, he was a big one who said, when you get up in the morning, look yourself in the mirror, be like, God darn it, like, this is going to be a great day, and believe in what you're doing and be passionate about and believe in what you're doing from your heart. Yeah. He was the best salesman I ever met. And then the second was Warren Miller. And Warren, for those who don't know him, was an amazing person in the ski industry, produced over 500 ski films, arguably probably did more for the ski industry than any human alive. And Warren became my mentor, a very good family friend. And he was so passionate about the art of storytelling, and watching him do that, and how he could take an audience and have them, you could hear a pin drop during one of his movies, because every word was straight from his heart and was deep passionate about a skier or a story that he had seen. And witnessing my grandfather and Warren over the years do that, I think kind of helped propel me to, what we're doing today and where I try to approach my businesses.
That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next thing I'm curious about is strategy. So we've talked about this before on the podcast. I think we have a whole episode on creating a strategic vision somewhere back in the archives. I'm not sure. But we talk about, Jim Collins has this model where he says that a strategic vision, which could be a product, it could be a project, it could be, hey, where do we want to be in 3 years as an organization? It really lives at the intersection of three different things. One is your passion that we've been talking about. So what are you passionate about? What makes you excited? What propels you to expend the effort necessary to do amazing things? The second thing is what drives your economic engine. So what's going to be sustainable over the long term and add value to
how do we make
your organization, money? Right? And then the third is, what do you have core competency in? So another way to say that is, what can you be best in the world at? And so when we think about these three things, I'm curious, of all your kind of ventures, projects, like, do you see those things converging? Are there some that stand out, like, hey, here's something I tried where I had the passion, but maybe it didn't drive an economic engine, it didn't create value for us? Or, man, here was something that it made money and we were good at it, but everyone was just kind of like, do I really want to be spending time doing this? Like, I don't know. What comes to mind for you?
No, it's those intersections are, I would agree with that analysis. And I think that as I reflect back, anything that we're doing today are things that I think certainly check the first two boxes. They're passionate and they make economic sense. Some, less than others, but nothing that Outlaw has in its wheelhouse now is not something that, at least has something that people are excited about. Otherwise, it dies pretty quickly in our organization. Yeah. There have been some publications that we tried to produce that, they made okay economic sense, but they didn't get people excited, or they didn't really have, it wasn't a real core competency of us. So a good example, we tried to do a food and dining guide for Big Sky. It's needed.
Yeah.
People want to know about restaurants.
Sure.
We really couldn't get fired up about it. The team really, it was a big push. It didn't really make a lot of money. The consumers wanted it, but it was a push. And we kept pushing it. And finally we just had to let it go. We tried to start a guide for Yellowstone Park. Really needed.
Yeah.
Heavy lift. Really didn't make good economic sense on the front end. And it wasn't a core competency of our team. Our team was too distracted and we had to let that go. So I think, we've learned those lessons over the years, and things seem to die pretty quickly within our organization right now. When the door opens at the boardroom every Tuesday morning, my team watches me walk in. I can see them hold their breath, because I usually come with a new idea. And if I were to have to admit a fault right now, is that I've challenged the team to push back more on me now, and really make sure that something's got those check marks before it gets into their system and starts to disrupt their lives. Because I can derail the company pretty quickly with a big idea. I can sell it. I can get really excited about getting into the coffee cup business. But the team needs to now, I've realized, I've tried to surround myself with more checks and balances to be like, Eric, hey, great idea, but we need to focus on this right now, or that's a great idea, but let's input it into the system in a more controlled manner to see if this is something really that the team can absorb right now.
Yeah. So tell us about kind of that journey with your team. I mean, if you were going to set chapters, you mentioned earlier an event sometimes being like an infant, and it's like a child, and then it's like a teenager, and eventually it's, hey, you're an adult, go and flourish. Teams a lot of times are the same way, in growing organizations. So tell us about some of those chapters, and what were those transitions to move from infant team to, hey, now we kind of know what we're doing. And now, as you're describing, I've got some people who, I really need them if I'm going to be successful at the scale we're at.
Absolutely. Well, there are things happening now at the company I have no idea. And that's scary, but exciting. And the only way we got there was by hiring the right people to do that. But back to your question, my company now is probably in its 30s to 40s, and it's left college and it's off on its own now, and it's starting its own ventures, and left home, and I don't know exactly what they're up to. But those early years, I started the business with friends, which in hindsight was awesome, because you can trust each other right away. There's a lot of sleepless nights. There's a lot of working weekends. It was tough on friendships. But it allowed us to build something very quickly that I think would have been difficult to do otherwise. So I think having friends that were in different skill sets, and there was 3 of us that started it, and we sat around a table and we decided to be outlaws, and away we went. And then from then, I think as I reflect back, one of the things our company did, which I think was a challenge, but also was good, is we hired a lot of young people. A lot of people that work for us, this is their first or second job out of school. Initially, we had to do that because that was all we could afford. And people move into a ski town and wanting a job, it was exciting to move there as a young person. And we had a lot of turnover, and that was a challenge for us. But they brought a lot of energy and a lot of good ideas. Now we're into this generation of the company. We can afford to hire people with larger skill sets. We're getting people with way more experience in areas of the company than I would ever have. And the trust factor has come up to where you can allow them to now take the vision and go. And I'm now not invited to a lot of meetings. I'm cut off on a lot of emails.
How does that feel, Eric?
It's hard. I'll wake up some mornings and hit the refresh on my inbox, and I'm like, I went from 70 emails, or 80 emails down to 10, and I'm like, wow. I wonder if they're open today.
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares. But it's every once in a while I'll eavesdrop on a meeting. I'll come in and just listen in on a Zoom call. And probably my favorite thing that our company does every Tuesday, and this has been a tradition since we started, is at the end of every Tuesday team meeting, we all have to go say what we're grateful for.
Oh, I love that.
And it's built this amazing culture within the company. And I told them that if anything ever happens to me, this is the one thing that you can never not do at the company. I don't care anything else. The gratefulness has to be a grounding point for the business every week. And that's probably the thing I miss the most.
Yeah.
And so I usually call in and listen to that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And I just want to call out for people listening. When we talk about, we talk about it a lot on this podcast, operationalizing purpose, behavioralizing our values, not just saying, hey, you know, one of our core values is gratitude, which I don't know if you've identified core values, what they are, but let's just say you had one of gratitude on the wall. Having a behavioralized practice, that means we say what we're grateful for at least once a week in a group setting, right? That level of specificity is really important. And so, you know, if you're listening, I would really encourage you to do some reflection on, you have some things that you say are important to your DNA, to your culture. Are they being lived out as a behavior? And it doesn't have to be rocket science, and it doesn't have to be some, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And we're going to invest a ton of time, whatever else. But it does mean that you have to pick something specific and then stick to it and say, no, this is what we do here. And when you get really good at it, you're even telling people that are applying, like, hey, just so you know, we're going to expect you to say something you're grateful for every week, right? That's part of what it means to be here. If that's something that excites you and you understand that gratitude helps us see the world a little bit less from our own perspective and more from others, and allows us to be less entitled and more, you know, humble even as we have success, then this might be a really good fit for you. So I just want people to hear that. It's not going to be saying what you're grateful for, for everyone listening, but it needs to be something else. And just like the PBR event is successful because it's authentic to Big Sky and what Big Sky is and the community, whatever you choose, whatever your practice is, whatever your event is, it needs to be authentic to you and who you already are. Just discovering it, clarifying it, making a practice and habit out of it.
Yeah.
No, it's a great point. And it's the word gratefulness gets thrown around a lot, but if you really go through what you just articulated and you're able to vocalize that in front of others, it is the most humbling thing that you will do. And I mean, it's incredible. And it bonds teams. Yeah. It bonds humans. People talk about their parents and their dogs and their kids and a favorite movie, or we've always got people that have their favorite sports teams every week they're grateful for, but it's a very grounding thing.
Yeah. We have a similar practice in our team, and we do it with a lot of our client teams. We open a lot of meetings, most of our meetings actually, with tell me something good. And it becomes an expression of what we're grateful for, right? And everybody starts with saying something that's good in their world right now, whether it's personally or at work, right? And it has that same effect, right? Yeah. Because it's about appreciating it, looking for the good and appreciating it. And there's neuroscience that will show that if you express gratitude more, your brain chemistry actually changes to where you have the ability to feel gratitude more and to see good things, right? Our brains have a negativity bias because we're really good at survival. So we're good at detecting threats. So our default is to go to worst case scenarios or things that could be bad. And we have to train our brains sometimes to intentionally look for the good. And when we do that, that function in the brain actually gets better. Yep. And it helps us have more feelings of joy and happiness and gratefulness.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the outcome neurologically. The other thing that a practice like that helps do is fight what's called the fundamental attribution error, which is a bias that we all carry with us, which is just that, you know, when other people mess up, we tend to attribute that to their character or a decision they made, you know, their laziness, or they are forgetful, or whatever it is, or they don't care. When we make a mistake, we tend to attribute that to the circumstances, right? And say, well, there was a lot of traffic this morning, or, I have a lot going on. I'm doing so many other things, like this one just wasn't priority. And that fundamental attribution error, basically we can undercut it, we can minimize it, if we start to understand the character of the people that we work with. So when we hear about the dogs and what's happening with parents and all of these things, and we really humanize the people that we work with, it's like, I know Eric, you know, I know that he cares about his community. I know he cares about his mom, right? And so I don't think he, you know, messed this up or forget. I don't think he's throwing us this idea. I'm going to prophesy here a little bit. I don't think he's throwing this idea in here just to try and blow up all the work that I've done the last 2 weeks on another project. I think he has the best intent in mind possible. And so those practices, gratitude, tell me something good, like they really help us see the intent of the people that we work with, which super practically just cuts out a lot of the bullshit of like questioning people and being nervous to talk to them, and all of these things.
It builds trust, right?
Yeah.
Which is fundamental for any human relationship and for any team culture.
Yeah, it's paramount. I do have a great mom, by the way. I'm very grateful for her. But it's as I reflect back and listen to you guys tell those stories, and I think back, I think we're at 16 different businesses right now. And if people say like, what's a thread of like what makes a thing successful or not, or like what's highlights in there? And as I was just reminiscing about them, all of them tie back to something that was less about the head and more about the heart. And what was interesting is that the ones that really came from the heart all turned out to be good financially, all of them. So like, what's your highlight of PBR over 12 years, Eric? Well, there's so many, the riders, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden I was thinking about it, I was like, it was my friend who's dying from ALS, bringing him and his brothers and his wife out to Montana because he loves Montana and did his honeymoon here. And it gave him an opportunity to be in a Montana setting with his family dying from this horrible disease that now my media has grabbed onto to try to help publicize the need for awareness around this horrible disease. And now they've become TEDx speakers for us. And that TEDx platform has exploded and opened up doors into all these amazing interviews that we've brought in through our media. And that was all done, zero intention of making any dollars off it.
Right.
Yeah.
It was all about leading from the heart of a person who deserved to be recognized and to be supported and put into one of our great events. I could tell those stories on and on and on. And they all, as I think about them, they've all done way more than I ever needed to financially, but they've brought more joy to our organization and soul to it than I ever could have dreamed of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, when I hear you say that, it brings this question to mind that, you know, you're the marketing expert. So you tell me, but what I'm suspicious of is that people with passion create markets rather than try and enter and maximize markets.
Absolutely.
And, you know, if you're just like, hey, I think I can go into this product, I think I can make it better, I think I can do the right marketing campaign, I think I can get 20% market share. Okay, maybe that's financially successful. People with passion about an idea or a product are like, this thing is so cool. People don't know they want it. They don't know they want to spend money on it. But I'm so excited about it. I think they will, you know? So I don't know. That's my non-marketing take. I'm curious, kind of reflect back to me a little bit about that.
It's so dead accurate. So people bring in a product and it's like, it might taste good or look good, but like, tell me this. I always want the story.
Yeah.
Like, how did you come up with this concept?
Yeah.
And then I keep pulling on that thread. It's like, no, it's an organic based food product in Montana. Okay, that's great. But like, tell me the story about like how your grandfather raised you on a farm and that's where you were introduced to organic foods and how your passion is to go out and help farmers protect their land and be able to raise and this is a real client that we have right now. And that's the story that's come out of it is you got to dig deep and pull on that thread. And also it's the importance of that first interaction with a consumer to your product. So don't take it for granted that the person answering the phone or the person who's greeting someone at the door of your business, that can make or break the entire, you can have done everything perfect at a restaurant, but if your server that's up front greeting people has had a bad day and is not able to have a genuine smile and greet people, everything you've done, I don't care how good the pancakes are, could be blown at that moment. Yeah. And so that authenticity and that way to connect with humans through either marketing, storytelling, or actually personal interaction is paramount. I mean, it's when I worked at a bike shop at 16, my my boss used to tell me, he goes, when someone comes in the door, you've got less than 5 seconds to stand up, look them eye to eye and greet them. If you're on the phone, put the phone down and be like, I'll be with you in a second. If you're with another person, just say, excuse me, I will be with you in just a couple seconds. Thank you for coming. Create that connection.
And the acknowledgement.
Acknowledgement. Absolutely. And if you don't do that, you're forcing that market, and it's not going to nearly have the success that you could.
Well, and it goes back to something that we talk about a lot on this podcast, and that it's something I really care about, and I try to learn how to do this better and to teach others how to do this better. But the basic human need, what every human being wants and needs more than anything else, is to feel seen, heard, and valued. We want to be noticed. We want someone to pay attention to us, to know that we exist, right? And that is such a core intrinsic need. And if we can understand how to do that for people, even if it's a very brief, you walk into a coffee shop and it's really busy. When the barista looks up, makes eye contact, and acknowledges that they've seen you, like, you're okay. Like, they're busy and they might say, I'll be right back with you. If you walk in, it's really busy, nobody looks up, nobody acknowledges you, what happens? We get either shut down, or we get tense or irritable, stressed, or we just walk out, right? Nobody cares. So that way of connecting authentically with people, I think, is the key to building relationships, building teams, building organizations. Yeah.
I'm often asked, Eric, if you had to drop all your businesses and only do one, which would you keep? And I look at it because, real estate has the most opportunity from a financial standpoint, and there's a lot of need. The events are incredible, create connection, all that type of stuff. But the one that I feel like if I had to choose today, it would be to keep the media with the intention of addressing what you've just articulated, because I feel that our society right now is so challenged with being able to stay open and connected. And if we can, we've got, I think, 3 to 4 million readers through our various platforms. If we can keep them educated on this topic, offer pieces of advice, give them things to be inspired about, make them cry, make them laugh, create connection, we can try to counterbalance where I fear our society's headed, which is this very isolated, cut off, non-authentic place that's you walk down the street and you wonder how many people are actually awake. And it's starting to get scary. And so media would be the one that I feel like we still have an opportunity to influence change. And that's probably the thing that keeps me awake at night, is I wake up and I'm like, I feel this obligation that our business has to help influence positive change in our communities and leave a mark on this world that makes a difference. And I don't care if it makes money. I hope it does.
Right.
But at this stage, and I have a luxury of being able to say that, but I have a responsibility to my employees to make sure they can make a living. But outside of that, our intention is to do good. And if we do good, we will do well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and we just recorded a podcast yesterday where we had a very similar conversation that was about that feeling of responsibility to a wider community, right? Looking at all the stakeholders, looking at the environment that you're in, looking at your entire value chain. And I guess I'm curious, we know there's a lot of founders, owners that they feel like what they are responsible for is within their walls, right? Within their walls, are we getting the right outcomes that we want? Are we financially successful? Is our turnover okay? Like, okay, great. What I hear you saying is like, no, primarily we're here to do good in the community that we're in, which, as I've heard you talk, like, is pretty expansive, right? It's not just Big Sky, it's regional. I imagine you might have some ideas for beyond regional. Right. Maybe you already are beyond regional. Where does that feeling of obligation and responsibility come from? Did it click at some point? Has it just always been a part of your DNA?
I think it's being raised well. You have parents in a family unit that, brings those ethos up in you. But I think for me, it's those humbling moments of, I've been in Nepal working with like orphan kids after an earthquake.
Yeah.
People that have nothing, absolutely nothing. And you can see how a little bit of kindness or connection can change a human and change the energy and change a day, an event. I mean, with just a human connection point like that. And I remember when I left Nepal after the last time we were there, and the people there that just absolutely changed my life forever. They're like, don't forget about us. And I was like, I would never forget about you. They're like, no, when people leave here, they tend to forget. And as I came home and I watched and I witnessed myself kind of drift away from this very authentic connection, and then I started to analyze, like, why did that happen? And it's because we become distracted and we get into this society of moving fast and things like that. But it comes from that, having had the opportunity to be split open, and have someone go in and grab your heart and be like, that's your universe, right? Get out of your head and listen. And I don't do this every day. There's a lot of days where I'm stuck in my head and I'm dealing with text and bad meetings and things like that. And the grounding point is, if I can get out of there and come back here, almost all my business decisions can be made with this interconnection of going back and forth. And the right one usually comes from here, not here.
Yeah. You know, a lot of folks that we've talked to right now, especially founders, you know, they lifted a lot a decade ago, 2 decades ago, and like getting this thing off the ground that they've created, you know, and as you mentioned with your friends starting, like lots of sleepless nights, lots just like grinding, doing the hours to get it over the hump. The pandemic, the last couple of years, has put a lot of founders kind of back, you know, it's kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back thing. And we see people kind of throwing their hands up and being like, I already did the grinding. And
I don't have the energy to do it again.
I don't have the energy to do it again. Like, what do people expect of me? And I don't hear that energy from you. And so as the environment changes, as new challenges arise, what is it that keeps the passion strong, and keeps you from kind of that temptation of entitlement, I guess, if I'm going to put words on it?
It's grown beyond me. So it's a responsibility to others, and the others is the company, is the others, the people that work there that make it happen. And then the people that have helped support it on this journey. So I'm here today because of all the people that helped me get to this point. And now it's a dangerous thing to do, but if I can step aside out of the flow and witness the flow go by, and the flow is the business, the people, the everything. And I am there now to help serve and facilitate my team. My biggest transition I'm making now is, instead of asking people to help me, I am asking how I can help them. And if I can, and that's a hard thing to do, because a lot of times I feel like I know the answer, and I might, but a lot of times they know a better answer, or they can facilitate, or if I can learn that if by helping support them do it, it takes a rock out of my backpack and like lightens my load a little bit and gives me more bandwidth to be healthier, happier, better in my home, better with my community. Like all of those things help, perpetuate this more. And so I think it's getting out of your own way, getting out and realizing that you're stronger as a unit than as an individual. And that was the biggest lesson learned through COVID. It was scary. I mean, we woke up and we're like, this is over. And what came out of it? Our company's 4 times growth in the last 2 years. Well, that happened because we all locked arms and we ran through the wall together.
So what you're talking about here reminds me of one of my mentors who I heard him present. It was somebody, it was not like an official mentor relationship, but it's somebody that was a leader in an organization I used to be part of. And every time I heard him speak, right, I would take something back, and we had a few exchanges that really impacted me. But one of the things he talked about is this debt that we owe to the universe. And it's about, we all are born into this world with some gifts, right? Our natural talents, some things that we're naturally good at, some level of privilege. There were some people that helped us survive, if not thrive, right? There have been people that have impacted our lives. Those are our gifts, right? Our natural talents. and the people and the resources that we were given. And everybody has some measure of that, right? Some have more than others in different buckets. And so those things, the more gifts you were given when you came into this earth and along your path, the more people that have invested into us, the more natural talents and gifts that we were given, the greater our debt to the universe. And that's really about, and that's when this whole thing about purpose really started clicking for me, right? We're purpose and performance group because we believe that purpose elevates performance. When you have a clear purpose, and that purpose for most people, when they start to being able to articulate what their purpose is. And for some people that takes a while, some people work on it intentionally, some don't, but they're aware of it. The more aware you become of what is my personal purpose, it almost always has something to do with impact, the impact we want to make in the world and the impact we want to make on others. And so I hear that passion and that clear sense of purpose in your story, and also the debt of gratitude to the people that brought you to where you are. Could you share a little bit with us of who are some of the mentors and some of the people that have impacted you and helped you be Eric Ladd that we meet today?
Well, I appreciate that. It's so Deepak Chopra, I was lucky enough to meet him, and he asked me what my Dharma was. And I didn't even know what Dharma was. Yeah. So he explained it, and he really pushed me over the 4 days I was with him. He's like, no, every day I saw him, he's like, what's your Dharma? Yeah. I'm like, oh, it's to build a business. He's like, no, go level deeper. And that's what you've just described is, what is your Dharma? Why are you on this planet? Mm-hmm. You don't have to be spiritual to answer that question. Everybody has a purpose. Yeah. My mentors, my parents were phenomenal. My grandfather, I mentioned, was, an amazing mentor. I was lucky enough to be founding part of the founding team that started Yellowstone Club. And this place is this attraction of all these business tycoons. Incredible people. And there's a handful of them up there that just really took the time to get to know me as a young businessman and invest in me and believe in me. And I think about, people like Jim Murphy and John Hemingway and Joe Rogers, who's the founder of Waffle House. Some of these incredible people who slowed down enough to get to know me and encourage me to step out on my own. And Eric, you've got a lot in there. Tim Blixeth, who started Yellowstone Club, was a huge believer in me. He took a bet on me at a young age and gave me a tremendous opportunity to set that platform up. And then I think some of my mentors now are people like Eric Stevens. I mentioned him earlier. He's suffering from ALS. To me, he's an inspiration. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I watch a man who went from being a professional football player and a firefighter to now he can barely walk. And the way that he conducts himself is so inspirational to me that it's like that. He's a mentor to me. Mm. And so now I look for those little opportunities in life. A mentor can be a billionaire businessman, or could be a spiritual leader, or could be a person who you would never suspect is right next to you. Mm-hmm. And by connecting with them, they can help, mentor you in life. Yeah. I look at those gifts as like seeds, and you can either keep all the seeds in your backpack because you can live through scarcity of I've only got 10 seeds left, or you can risk and go plant those. And all of a sudden you've got 1,000 seeds. And every time I have felt like I was in a position of scarcity in business or life, and I dared to push it back out and give it away or invest, every time, if it was done genuinely, it's come back 3 to 10-fold every time. Yeah.
So I want to look towards the future. So Big Sky's Boomtown, right? You guys both live there. I don't. So tell me if I'm wrong. Lots of things happening, lots of growth, lots of excitement. And for folks who haven't been here, it's palpable. So I live in Tulsa, but when I come to the area, it's palpable. Something is happening that's pretty magical. So I'm curious, when you look ahead 10 years, what are the types of things that you see in your community, ways that you are contributing, ways that the businesses potentially might be growing? What are those things that maybe when you're awake at 2 a.m, right, are kind of running through the mind and forming,
So I'm gonna step out on a limb here because a part of our business is the real estate development arm. So we are in the middle of just a little known fact. Our county that you're in that's so palpable is the fastest growing county in the country. Why? Right? Montana's beautiful, Yellowstone Park, that silly show Yellowstone, all of those things are pointing people here. So our real estate company is going through this incredible opportunity boom. Mm-hmm. But as I look forward 10 years, I look at that my responsibility to do a positive impact on this area is I'm being tested now more than ever because the opportunity and the temptation just to go chase money right now is fueling this incredible boom.
Yep.
But when I wake up 10 years from now, I don't want to be looking at the success of like how many apartment doors we built or how much bigger our event got or how big our stadium is that we hope we can build. All those things will probably happen in some way, shape, or form. I want to say, did we take this opportunity to help protect and cherish this place that we all were attracted to? Mm-hmm. So half of my meetings today are talking about conservation, land preservation, the rivers, animal migration corridors. The things that don't have a voice are probably the things that I'm most concerned about and focused on for the next 10 years. And all of our other businesses are like, they're running, and I'm trying to channel those efforts and means towards a counterbalance so that we can look back 10 years from now and say, thank goodness we had the foresight to like set aside that park or help protect that tributary into the Gallatin. Like those things to me are legacy plays that have to be done.
Yeah. And the newcomers aren't going to care as much as you.
Well, I think they care. They just don't know.
Yeah.
Right. If they don't know and you can't be curious about something you have no awareness of, right? So building the awareness, and that's where media can really help, right? Building the awareness of this is the ecosystem that we're part of. This is the culture that exists here. These are the values of this community. These are the things that are important here. And people that come here they come here because they're drawn to something about that. Yep. But if they don't know the specifics, like what are the things I really should care about and protect, they're maybe not going to be aware, and they're going to just go on, business as usual, or bring practices from wherever they're moving from that may not be sustainable in this community or may not build the type of community that maybe they really wanted to come here for in the first place.
Absolutely. And so I went into our editor-in-chief, Joe O'Connor, great guy, works amazing team that produces all of our media, and our magazine's coming out in a couple weeks. And he's like, all right, what's going to be the topic of this magazine? We were going back and forth. And I said, the entire magazine, all 150 pages, Joe, are dedicated to cause. And he looks at me and goes, excuse me? I said, the entire magazine. I said, because our society more than ever right now needs to be made aware of issues. Yeah. But I said, here's the challenge. And this is what drives me nuts with media right now. They do an unbelievable job, a productive job at reporting all the things that are all the problems. The river's polluted. There's war. There's this tree dying, this animal. But audit yourself on how often you see those journalists actually close the loop on how to fix the problem, solve the problem, or when the problem's caused. I would venture to guess that 95% of journalists reporting today is about the issue. Very rarely do they actually help a viewer or reader get educated enough on how to close the loop. Yeah. So I said, any story that's in this magazine, the journalist has to write in full closed loop on this. Otherwise, I'm not printing it. So make me aware of all the animal migration problems in the Gallatin County area. It's huge. All of our elk corridors are getting cut off. The highways are getting busier. The animals are having problems migrating in and out of Yellowstone Park. It's been well reported on, but okay, what's next? Yeah. And if we can't articulate that, we can't solve it. So it goes back to, the importance of journalism and media. Yes, we're going to use that and I hope what you're going to witness through our media in the next chapter is a more evolved way of reporting that actually gives someone an opportunity, if they connect with that they can actually impact change.
Yeah. No, that's powerful. And it reminds me of, our show's producer, Ben, who I think you've been in communication with, always talks about in order to solve a problem, you have to first define the problem, right? And that's where, I think that's a really powerful, media has power, right? But if we can effectively identify the problems, the challenges, and then communicate what they are and help bring about awareness, right? The solutions can come.
Right. You got to make it easy for people. You got to educate them, and then you got to make it to where once you can get their attention, which is hard to do today, it's really hard to get people's attention and educate them. But if you can do it, you've got to make it easy for them to then make impact. Yeah. That's why these fundraising sites, when people get hurt or something like that, and you can go click on there and give $10 or $100, work so well. You create passion by a picture or a story, and you make it easy for someone to close the loop. Well, we've got a lot of issues like that around the world in our communities. And if we want to build a better society, better, interaction with nature and our fellow man, we've got to make it easy for us all to do our little part. Some can do it through money, some can do it through action, some can do it through changing of their lifestyles. And I think that's one of our obligations right now for our business is we have to help close the loop on anything we do. And so I'm not allowing our team, and if they listen to this, they're going to be held accountable. They can't report on things unless they can help close the loop.
Yeah. What I hear is kind of a theme that you're talking about there is this paradox of we have strength when we are diversified. Right. So before we started recording, talked about, hey, there's a lot of strength in the diversification of we have all these different functions within Outlaw Partners. The same thing's happening across organizations nationwide, right? Rise of the gig economy. The things that we talk about on this podcast a lot are how do we distribute leadership, distribute power down to different business units. Typically leaders, if they're resourced well at the business unit team level, will make great decisions. And they can only do that if there's a clear, singular narrative about where we're going and what outcomes we're trying to create. So this paradox of clear, unifying narrative and diversification and sharing of power to lots of different units and teams and individuals to execute on that vision. And, when I hear about this vision for Big Sky, where's the clear narrative? And if there isn't a narrative, what's your role in filling that and helping clarify the narrative to really enable and empower everyone who's excited and passionate about making it a thriving community for decades and decades.
Yeah. And if you want to hear a scary story, Big Sky is unincorporated with no leadership.
Yeah.
So now, bake that cake.
Yeah.
You've got one of the largest, fastest growing communities in the country, billions of dollars of real estate being developed and created, business opportunities more than you could dream of, and no defined leadership or vision.
Wow. Yeah. And I think for leaders listening,
it's a tall order.
Yeah. For leaders listening, I just want you to think about how you can apply that same principle, right? You should be empowering people who are closest to the work to solve the problems that arise in the moment, in real time. You should be experiencing that agility. And the only way to do that is through clarity of vision, clarity of purpose that's shared throughout the system, throughout the organization.
Yep. All right. So this has been a fascinating, fun, enlightening conversation, Eric. Really appreciate you being here. As we're kind of starting to close the conversation here, what are some thoughts, tips, advice that you have for other leaders out there who are visionaries? They have a big vision, they have heart, they have passion for something. What are some things they can do? And we've talked this theme of being the best, right? How do you create something that's the best in class? What are some things that other leaders can do that maybe you've learned from your journey?
I think with those ideas that you wake up and you want to start that widget or start that business, it's kind of, fun to say this, but it's, anything's possible. You hear it all the time. But to actually get that thing off the dime is to take the time to actually articulate why it is the best idea. Like slow down, test it with your family and friends, write the business plan out, study it. Is it authentic to place? Is this a need that the community needs? And if you feel it in the center of your chest, don't deny this. Keep pushing it. But before you take it to market, before you spend the money or go ask for money to raise, because all the money in the world is out there for any idea right now. Yeah. I mean, people have so much money, they're burning it, flying into space just to take a tour. There's plenty of money for any business idea is possible right now. Yeah. But if you want to break through the clutter and get the attention, it has to be the best in class. Or it has to be something that grabs someone in the center of the chest, chokes them up a little bit, go for the basic emotional needs and connect on that human level. So I think that's probably my parting advice from an idea perspective is really slow down enough to make sure you can articulate it and that you are the best, and coming from an emotional standpoint that you're going to break through all the clutter of today, which is a lot. There's a lot of social media clutter and it's hard to get people's attention. But know that any money you need is out there. Money is not an issue right now. It's attention. And so there's always there. The second is, you talk a lot about it, and there's room for growth in our organization on this, is articulating that vision within a company. And that's a struggle when we're diversified like we are. I wake up every day trying to be able to get my team to have community buy-in on what that vision is. And that's a very challenging thing to do, but that is done through slowing down enough to be able to articulate that, getting support with organizations like yours to come in and help businesses be coached to be able to do that. And then and last is, as a leader, once you start to feel that success, is to make sure you surround yourself with the right people, empower them. Don't be afraid to give it away. Because if you do, that the cumulative effort of a team or community behind you will support it. Yeah. And so that PBR this year will give away more money. We'll support more of the community. We'll do more about giving out than in. And it will be the highest grossing event of our tenure in doing this, but we will also do more for the community than we've ever done. So don't be afraid to give it away.
That's awesome. Thank you, Eric. Luke, any final thoughts?
I just, this theme of giving it away, being willing to transform, being willing to lean into that next stage. Like, I've heard that as a theme from you today. And I just want to encourage people, if you're a leader, if you're a business owner, if you think one day you're going to have 200 employees or 500 employees or whatever, your role is going to be different. So why, when you're transitioning from 20 to 30, would you hesitate? Right? So I would say, if you're feeling that hesitation as a leader, and forget the numbers, right? It's just an example. Wherever you are, whatever hesitation you're feeling about your role changing, know that you need to spend time on that and understand why you're feeling that. Because if you look 2, 3, 4 step functions ahead, you're going to have to change your role. So the faster you figure it out, the faster you figure out what you need to learn to transition, the better. And I think, if you listen back to this episode just with those ears of, Eric being willing to listen and learn about what's coming next, being perceptive to lean into that, I think that would be a really good thing for leaders to reflect on.
Awesome. So Eric, if people want to connect with you, Outlaw Partners, learn more, what's a good way to reach you or find you?
You bet. So our media is at outlawpartners.com has got all of our companies kind of centralized there. Our media is primarily based off of explorebigsky.com, and you'll find a number of the media sources there. Mountain Outlaw is our magazine. I'd love to mail you a copy anywhere in the country. Great magazine. And that cause issue is coming
beautiful
out.
Beautiful too.
Thank you. So this one's going to be something we're going to be proud of, this one that's coming out in a couple of weeks. Or where I'd really like to see or meet you is one of our events. Big Sky PBR is end of July. And then August 12th and 13th, we're going to host an amazing concert in Big Sky and have 4 amazing Grammy Award-winning artists playing music in a tiny venue. But come and visit us in Big Sky and Bozeman. They're great places, and you can tie in a Yellowstone Park trip while you're at it. So
I love it. Awesome. All right. And if you want to learn more about how to clarify your company's purpose, your personal purpose, build strong leaders, build strong teams and resilient organizations, you can find us at purposeandperformancegroup.com. We'd love to connect with you. Thank you.
Magic in the Room is hosted by Chris Province, Hannah Bratteroo and Luke Freeman, and produced by Ben West. Theme music is by Evan Grimm. Title track Fake Love, available on Apple Music. and this podcast was recorded at Storycatcher Studio with video and audio editing and production support by Brad O'Hara and Alicia Crum, with inspiration, strategy and technical support by yours truly, Neil Hughes. Magic in the Room is a production of Purpose and Performance Group. You can find us at purposeandperformancegroup.com, and remember, previous episodes are available at magicintheroom.com.